Welcome back to Healing Echoes with Caitlin Curran. I'm your host. Today's episode is one of the most personal things I have shared yet. But I know someone needs to hear this, and so I'm super excited to share. This week, I'm going to be taking you inside something that happened to me in real time. My nervous system hit a wall and my body took over. What followed was one of the most profound healing experiences of my life to date. We're going to talk about what it actually looks like or can look like when your nervous system is overwhelmed, how your body stores trauma, and what it looks like to finally let it go. The role of being witnessed and held by someone that you trust, and why I believe that my body went into labor, even without a baby. This episode is raw, it's real, and it's a window into exactly why I do the work that I do. So let's get into it. I asked for patience in this week's episode as I have been sick for the last week. So if you notice a difference or a strain in my voice, it is because I am still recovering. I do apologize for how that may sound. However, I knew that this episode could not wait any longer to be shared with you guys. So over this last month, my nervous system was really holding a lot, right? For those of you who know me, you know that I am a business owner. I'm also a mother of 5. I'm a wife. I'm also neurodivergent and chronically ill. So my nervous system holds a lot on a regular basis anyways. But over this last week, I not only got sick, but I also started my period. I started my period 6 days late, which in and of itself was a sign of just how stressed out my nervous system was, that it was throwing off my cycle. When I am usually a very regular person, I'm like to the day, 28 days every month. So to be 6 days late with no chance of it being pregnancy was very odd. I got sick and started my period on the same day. I had a significant crisis hit my marriage the Thursday beforehand, and then I had started my period and got sick that Saturday. It was already a very financially tight month for us this month, and then on top of that, our car broke down midweek. We went out one morning to take our kiddos to school, and it didn't want to start. Turned out to just be a battery issue, which we were very, very thankful for. Much more affordable fix, but it's still very stressful and scary. It is our only vehicle, and that vehicle helps us transport all of our children to and from school, and also gets my husband to and from work. Throughout all of these things, right, all of these obstacles that felt like they were just being rained down upon me, I kept choosing peace. I kept choosing to speak gratitude and speak it out loud, even when it was really hard, even when I felt like giving up. And there were definitely times that I did. I'm even sitting with my husband in the evenings, I would say, like, I just don't want to do this anymore. Speaking of the struggles, just being incredibly tired. But even with having expressed that I just didn't want to do it anymore, right? I needed a break. I still felt like I was really showing up for myself and for my family and for my marriage by continuing to choose not only peace but gratitude, to find the silver lining, to keep pushing forward. But even with all of those things, my nervous system still needed a break. It was still overwhelmed, and I wasn't really doing anything for myself to help negate that. So I believe it was, what day is today? Today is Sunday. So it would have been this Friday, after our children were in bed. I made it very clear to Torrin, my husband, that I really wanted some one-on-one time, right? That day had been really physically hard for me. My sickness had actually come back with a vengeance after I thought that I was improving. and I'd had a really rough day. I had started to get low-grade fevers and body tremors and just felt very much on the decline. And they had been very attentive throughout the day, laying with me, making sure that I had all the things that I needed to be as comfortable as possible, while also taking care of our home and our children. But like I said, once all the children were in bed, I was very explicit that, like, now that all of the other responsibilities have been taken care of, I really need to just connect. The magnitude of my sickness had weighed on me emotionally. And so I had told them, like, I want to lay together. I want to lay in your lap. That's something that brings me a lot of comfort. While laying in their lap on our bed in between their legs, I started to feel a panic attack starting. And this is something I've dealt with in the past, where if I am physically ill or I'm feeling certain physical ailments, I attribute it to something medically wrong with me, like to a level of medical crisis. And so then I start panicking. And so I knew that's what was happening here. I knew that my body was just really, really tired. The combination of being sick for over a week and having a really rough period was also flaring my POTS symptoms. And so my entire body, physically as well as emotionally, my nervous system, it was freaking out. So I knew that it was a panic attack. I could rationalize with myself that I wasn't actually in medical crisis. And so I was trying to do my breath work and do deep breathing. My husband was very aware of where I was. I was voicing my emotions out loud, and they were doing deep breathing with me, as well as verbal affirmations that I was okay, that they were there with me, all of the things. But it wasn't really working. Like, it would work very temporarily, and then I would just feel that panic come back in waves. And all of a sudden, it just hit me that I have been doing tapping, EFT, long enough now through my mentor Shakti and through my really good friend Katie that I knew how to do it on my own and that I should try that. So I decided to lay flat. Again, I'm laying up against my husband. So I've scooched down a little bit. My head is like in between his legs, and I'm laying completely flat. And I start tapping, and I'm affirming out loud, I am safe. My body is wise. It is simply trying to communicate its needs with me. I am going to listen. And just over and over, different things, but always along those lines. And then I invited my husband in with me to do those tappings with me and do those affirmations out loud with me. And I started to feel my body relax. It was much more successful than just the deep breathing, for sure. Excuse me. And in affirming out loud, I was also just continuing to verbally communicate what I was feeling in my body and what was coming up for me emotionally and mentally, like what I was processing in real time. And one of the things that I've noticed affects my nervous system and therefore my emotional system as well, the most is compression on my vagus nerve. For those of you that don't know, the vagus nerves runs the entire length of your body, and it is connected to almost every other nervous system. I'm sure there's a much more correct way of explaining that, but it is basically a very, very important nerve that runs throughout the length of your body and starts in your neck. And for me, the very first time that I compressed this nerve was a car accident that I got in back in 2018. And ever since then, I have had to continuously do work to make sure that I release the tension around that nerve. And I often forget. It's not at the forefront of my mind. I have a lot on my plate and I forget to do that work. And so it gets compressed and my nervous system gets thrown off. On top of that, the vagus nerve being compressed can even trigger things like acid reflux. And acid reflux is something I've dealt with for many, many years. So this came up, I bring this up because as I'm laying there doing the EFT, I'm flat on my back, and so I start to get acid reflux flaring up. And so I sit up, and I'm sitting up towards the end of our bed. My husband is still behind me, legs still surrounding me, and I'm communicating with them these things, and I'm explaining these things to them. And so I asked them, and I was like, I think it would be really good to massage my neck and my shoulders. I also have an injury in my right shoulder, and most people, women especially, carry a lot of stress and tension in their neck and shoulders. And so that as well just kind of compounds that, this nerve being compressed. Not only have I received injuries to it, not only do I have an injury to my shoulder, but I also tend to carry all my stress in my neck and shoulders. A recipe for disaster. So I asked my husband if they would massage my neck and my shoulders. And of course they do. Anyone who knows anything about my marriage or has read my book or, follows me on social media knows that my husband is my best friend, one of my biggest supporters, and they never hesitate to show up for me in whatever way that I need them to, especially if I've asked them to. As soon as my husband started massaging, it was just instant physical relief, but also the undeniable urge to cry. And so I said that out loud. Again, I've been processing out loud with my husband a lot. I am a verbal processor, and so I've kind of leaned into that, and I've noticed how much of a difference it's been making. So I say that. I say, I just really need to cry. And so my husband affirms, like, if that's what you need to let it out. There's nothing shameful in crying. And so I do. And I not only cry, but I continue verbally processing what's coming up for me as they are working these muscles. And some of the things that came up for me were, first and foremost, my mother's words about my posture as a child. So I started struggling with bad posture at a pretty young age. I actually started hunching over because my chest developed at a really young age, and it made me a target for abuse I was already suffering. And so I tended to hunch over to try to hide that, right? Which resulted in a bad posture. And now I also have back injuries that really accentuate the curvature of my spine. But my mother's words when I was a child was that if I did not correct my posture, I would become a hunchback, and I would then be unattractive and unlovable. And that was reinforced by her continuously on a regular basis, buying me posture correction harnesses, I guess is what they would be called. And it was just something it was not a one-time thing. It was continual for years, and it has left a lasting impression, more than I even realized until this night. And I realized how much I'd been carrying that wound. When I see pictures of myself that other people have taken, I will occasionally see that bad posture, and I'll just immediately speak so negatively about myself. And so I was processing that, and I said, I'm sitting here, my husband loves me, my husband is rubbing my back and my shoulders and gently placing kisses on my upper back, and just without even intentionally doing so is affirming that even with a hunch, even with bad posture, even with a curvature in my spine, I am lovable and I am attractive. And so I was able to release this narrative. And then it moved on to how much I have been carrying all my life, especially since I became a mother at such a young age. I became a mother at 19, and I went from carrying the narrative that my mother placed on me to carrying the responsibility of being a mother myself. And the emotional and mental labor that we as women and mothers carry for over 10 years now. And that's all just sitting there. It's sitting there in my shoulders and in my back. And I've never had anyone massage them in the way that my husband is. And I need to emphasize that when I say in the way that my husband is, because I have been to chiropractors, I've been to physical therapists, I've received massages. I think there is something so important about who it is that is touching you and with what intention they are doing the work. And I think that's what made the difference. Not only that it was my husband, but that they were so intentionally not only trying to relieve the physical tension, but the emotional, mental, and spiritual tension as well. And so I was not just removing that energy myself. I was doing it with someone who had the gifts to aid me in that process. So much shifted that night. And this is only part one of the 2 experiences I had this weekend that I knew I had to share with you guys in this episode. So much shifted in that. Being able to release the narrative of the things my mother told me, my mother's narrative, being able to release all the weight I've been carrying as a mother, as a wife, as a leader. And then it shifted into the things that we've been working through in our marriage. And it shifted into that because in real time I was processing who they are to me, who my husband is to me, and how they're showing up for me. And so I just verbally acknowledged, I do not want to do this life alone. I want them beside me as I become this next version of myself, this higher version of woman that I didn't even know was possible. But I do now. I can see her and I'm becoming her, and I don't want to do it by myself. I will if I have to. I will choose myself and I will choose my calling, but that is not what I want. I do not want someone else by my side as I step into my next level of leadership. I want Torin by my side, and that I want to be by their side as they step into their own becoming as an author, as they're really embracing that this is a dream that they have not even really begun tapping into, and that I want to be able to provide them the space to do that, and I want to walk alongside them in that journey. And so by the end of this experience, we were really leaning back into partnership and back into our marriage. And it was just such an incredible experience, not only physically, not only on the nervous system level, but on a spiritual and emotional level for me, for my trauma, and for us as a couple. It was just such an incredible experience, unlike anything I've ever experienced before. And I have, experienced things like this before, but not anything to this level. By like this, I mean like I've processed things before, right? I've known for a long time that the body and the emotional and spiritual worlds are all connected. And I've done work in that realm before, but nothing to this magnitude. So I just sat in gratitude for them and just awe at this experience. So that was part one. That was the first experience. And even that blew my mind. The next day, I was still sick. I woke up still sick. I've been struggling really bad with what I believe is a sinus infection. Again, I am chronically ill. I have asthma. And this time of year just is really difficult for me. And my allergies get really bad. And it's very easy for it to escalate into a sinus infection. And then it's really hard to get rid of. So I woke up the next day, still sick, but really wanting to get out of the house. So one of the things that is impacted by me being chronically ill is that I'm very heat resistant. I am heat sensitive. I have POTS, and that does not react well to the heat, as well as being autistic. I don't regulate my own body temperature very well. And then on top of that, I am on medication that is heat sensitive. So triple whammy. And it is already very, very hot this year in Florida. We have already had heat indexes in the hundreds, but it was early morning, and I asked my husband, I was like, can you please just go put one of the rocking chairs in the shade under the tree? I really want to have my feet in the grass, and I'll just be out there for a couple of minutes. I just really need out of the house. I need to ground. I want to get some fresh air. Unfortunately, the heat and that heat sensitivity, it kicked in very quickly, and I actually came back inside even sicker than I had been. And I was shaking and shivering. I had that feverish feeling again. And so my husband did all the things again. They met me where I needed to be met. They asked what I needed. They also are very in touch with me and are very aware and knowledgeable about all of my symptoms and illnesses. And so sometimes they can tell what I need without even having to ask me. So they did all of the things and took the time to actually lay with me, because again, those symptoms, when they get so severe physically, it tends to trigger anxiety. And so having them lay with me tends to relieve that anxiety. So as we're laying there, I'm laying on my left side, and I'm noticing that my right lower abdomen is starting to ache again. My right lower abdomen is a reoccurring theme of pain for me. I have PMOS, which is the new naming of PCOS for those who are not aware. I also have PMDD and endometriosis. So I often get flare-ups that specifically target my right lower abdomen. But I'm also noticing in recent months that this is also where my trauma is stored. I've known for some time that I store my trauma in my hips and in my sacral area. But being on my period is not usually when this area flares. It is usually the week before my period. So for this area to start flaring, I almost immediately tapped into that this was emotional. This was something else flaring. This was not strictly physical. It might have been showing up in a physical symptom, but that it was trauma and it was emotional. My body was trying to communicate something with me. And so frequently when I have this flare up, I will place my hand over it and kind of just visualize pushing positive cleansing energy into that area. But I had this overwhelming urge to not do it myself. And I think especially reflecting on the night before and that experience with my husband, I was called to ask them to place their hand over that area. And they did so again. And I feel like it was such a big thing choosing to let myself be cared for and leaning into their healing capabilities and not just myself. I mean, one of my trauma responses is hyper independence. And so it's really, really hard for me to let myself be cared for and to trust other people with my care, especially when it's not just physical. And then I not only felt relief, it actually intensified first. And I felt the pain beginning to move from that right lower abdomen area in the front to my back, and into my bottom towards my vagina and my rectum area. That pressure that you feel when you are in labor, and the what is the word? Like a contraction, that wave, that ebb and flow of pressure and pain. And it so closely mimicked labor, specifically mirroring the labor I experienced with my youngest child. And again, processing out loud in real time as these feelings physically moved through me. and then also emotionally what was coming up for me, what memories were being brought to the forefront. Processing with my husband that it was mimicking the labor and delivery that I endured with Rihanna, and how I endured that alone. I did not have a partner that cared. My partner was present at the time, but they did not care what I was enduring. I actually labored with Rihanna for weeks before I was actually admitted to the hospital. And I did not have the kind of person who would, apply pressure to my hips or make sure that I was comfortable. I was laboring and birthing my youngest child while living with my abuser. So having my husband there, not only holding that front area, but then moving their hand around to my back and applying that pressure to my lower back and to my hips. And then knowing without me asking to apply that pressure down and out through my tailbone allowed me to release the trauma that was stored there. And I did not have to ask them to do that. I did not have to verbally communicate. And again, I think that that is just so significant, to be with someone who is so in tune with you, so spiritually aware, so knowledgeable about the connection between our spiritual and our physical realms, to be able to be held and led and not always need to be the leader. We as women, we do lead. We lead our families, we lead our children. Oftentimes we lead in our marriage. And so being able to pause from that and be held and be led is monumental, especially for women who have never experienced it before. And so I really just want to emphasize towards this end of this episode that our physical symptoms, the pain, panic, they are not punishment, whether it be an actual strictly physical ailment or one that is tied to more. Whether it is either one or it is both, it is never punishment, it is communication. Our system, both spiritual, emotional, and physical, is extremely intelligent, and it is always trying to communicate a need or a want or a desire with us. And when we stop seeing our systems as the enemy or as misbehaving, is really when we can start healing. You don't have to white knuckle your way through this process. There is pain and there is discomfort, oftentimes in healing, just like with laboring and birthing a child. But it is rewarding, and you can ask for support. And I often find that when we ask for support and we trust our people and we trust ourselves and we trust our systems, the pain is significantly lessened. It's actually able to be a pleasurable, positive experience. Being witnessed, truly witnessed and shown up for, is a part of that medicine. We are not meant to do these things alone. Nothing about who we are is meant to experience this life, this existence, this journey solo. I also want to emphasize, as much as I am a huge advocate for therapy in whatever form, it does not always look like, healing does not always look like being in a therapy office, right? There are so many ways to receive healing. Sometimes it looks like your partner's hand on your abdomen or your lower back or holding you. Sometimes it looks like EFT. It can look like so many different things. This is often what somatic healing looks like in real time and in real life. To me, what I just experienced was not just me processing my own trauma and finally releasing it. Especially the second experience, mimicking labor and childbirth. is because I am birthing something new. This is why I do what I do. I call myself and my business Soul Midwife for a reason. I midwife people through the threshold of themselves and their life. I hold space for women to have their own version of this, to be witnessed, to release, again, to birth new versions of themselves through story. So this was not just for me. This was because I am stepping into an even larger aspect of being able to hold those spaces for women. And that is incredibly exciting. I am filled with so much gratitude. This experience came on the same weekend of me birthing my new one-on-one trauma-informed mentorship container, and I do not think that that is a coincidence. Not at all. And anyone who knows me knows that I don't even believe in coincidences. So, I am just filled with so much gratitude. I'm continuing to reflect on these experiences and what they mean for me and what they will mean for the women that I show up for and I hold space for and I mentor. I hope that in me sharing these experiences, you are also able to walk away with something positive. I hope that you show up for yourself. I hope that you allow someone that you trust to show up for you. I hope that you allow yourself to be held. You can find out more about everything that I do and the way that I show up for women at CaitlinCurranWrites.com. I am incredibly grateful to each and every one of you who listen in, who follow along on the work that I do and my personal journey. And I look forward to sharing more with you next week.